real way, there's a connection between suicide and the desire to die and the phenomena of shame-based secrets, the reality that in shame-based cultures and shame-based countries, that when certain types of abuses occur, when certain violations occur that inflict pain, often on children, sometimes women, sometimes the feminine side of men, the sensitive side in human beings, that because this does not make the abuser look good, and in many cases is illegal, that we attack the abuser. We shame the abuser if it emerges that they wear the face of our cultural shadow. And the response, given that most of what occurs in an abusive shadow-based nature is compulsive, meaning it's very rare for an abuser to abuse someone in a way that has nothing to do with the way that they were abused, either emotionally, mentally, or physically. The pattern, whether it's emotional, mental, or physical, tends to be the same. And what's really being passed on is a message that certain parts of the psyche are valueless. So, step one of the abuse cycle is a child is abused in some way. And by abuse, at the core level, it's a message of valuelessness. In some way, part of that individual receives a message of valuelessness. And a message of valuelessness carries with it the trauma that is implicit in that message. Trauma is a message that one's survival is in jeopardy. And a message of valuelessness always correlates with a message that one's survival is in jeopardy. As human beings, we are multidimensional. Thoughts are a dimension, emotions are a dimension. Money is, or the financial ecology of our culture is a dimension of physicality, but it's also closely linked in our culture with value, etc. So we are a multidimensional species. And within those many dimensions are facets, the sphere, the entire probability field of what it is to be human is broken down into bits. And each of those bits, each of those faces, have an identity. Now, these identities are defined by our distinctions, because within the multidimensionality of humanity and the infinite dimensions and faces of self, the identities that we, as a self-defined and as a culturally defined ego being simply a separate identity within the species, form are the distinctions of that culture's awareness and mind. So we break down sex, we break down age in our culture, we break down money a great deal in our culture. We make little bits of paper and give them different numbers. Numbers are distinctions that we've invented. And when you have a gap between here and here, we could break this gap down infinitely. We could say some hate who. That would be 3 distinctions in a gap this big. We could say ping, pang, pock, another 3 distinctions. Or we can say 1, 2, 3. Now, we can also use millimeters. That's just a random distinction. Why not say 1,000? What's 1,000? 10 times 100. Well, what's 100? 10 times 10. What's 10? It's 10 inches. Well, what's an inch? It's just a random length of things that we start multiplying by. So we can create, 1 trillion distinctions between this amount, or we can just say, it's it. There's just one measurement, and this is it. This is a sum, or a boom. It doesn't mean anything. And the same is true with any measurement. Measurement of time. A second is the same invention. But we create these distinctions, and having created them, we then say, I am them. We say, for example, doing this and this is arrogant. Well, what is arrogant? It's doing that, that, and that. Well, you're now doing that, that, and that, so you are arrogant. I'm the one that does that, that, and that. I'm the arrogant one. Okay, so now I'm the arrogant one. And then we say, arrogance is bad. What is bad? Well, bad is that. And what is that? That is arrogant. And, well, what does that mean, that arrogance is bad? Well, it means that I don't want anything to do with you. So I'm the one now out of nothing that you don't want anything to do with. And you don't want anything to do with it either, because we've agreed in this culture that bad is that which we want nothing to do with. Well, why isn't bad that which we work on to transform into something we like? Well, that would be a different culture, wouldn't it? That would be a culture that turned things we don't like into things that we like. But we're a culture that creates garbage. We're a culture in the United States that creates 102 metric tons of garbage for every 200-pound person on average. With obesity, if we just say that the average person weighs 200 pounds, 102 metric tons of garbage. Well, what is garbage? It's all these things that we don't want. Well, why don't you want them? Well, we don't know what to do with them. Well, why don't you figure that out? Well, we don't want to. So what are you going to do with them? We're going to dig a big hole and throw it in the ground. See, we're a culture that produces garbage. And what we mean by that is there's all these things that we want for a very short time for some small purpose or other, and we dig them out of the ground as what we call oil. Well, why is it called oil? Well, why not? It's just all this stuff. It's our relationship. We do the same thing once we've happily accepted the idea, the paradigm of garbage. You see, because nature doesn't have any garbage. Nature doesn't say this is all the stuff, because if nature was like Americans, we weigh 200 pounds and create 102 metric tons of garbage per person. Nature was like garbage. There would be 1,000, there would be 1,000,000 planets of waste, meaning that over the course of 100 years, every 100 years, nature would generate, the Earth, the planet would generate a million other planets and then walk away from them as hopeless and useless and something they wanted nothing to do with. Well, of course, that doesn't work. Where's nature going to get 100 million, planets and just walk away? It doesn't work. So it doesn't do it. There isn't any garbage in nature. This turns into this, and this turns into this, and the waste of these animals becomes the fertilizer for this, and there's this wonderful ecology. Ecology, a very new word in the Western temperament. But coming back to suicide and our connection with secrets and shames, when the part of us, you see, because we come into this culture and we learn the mentality of the culture. We learn, for example, as a man in the West, particularly in my generation, that to be homosexual, i.e. to be effeminate, i.e. to be feminine, is at best a very mixed bag. I've probably heard 10,000 messages in my life referencing the unspeakability of homosexuality, referencing the undesirability of homosexuality, referencing that we don't talk about it, referencing that to be effeminate might make people think that you're homosexual, and you wouldn't want that. So 10,000 messages about that alone. Or 10,000 messages about how hard and imprisoning and frustrating marriages are. Or 10,000 messages or 100,000 messages about how one's value is correlated to one's income, meaning the bits of paper we have invented and then called money, and then put as a status symbol, and then have, how much money do you have? How many bits of paper do you have in a bank account? Well, I have 6 bits of paper. Is that a lot? No. There's people with 1 billion bits of paper in the bank. Oh, they must be important. All that paper? It's like, why? Well, don't you get it? Don't you know? You haven't heard all those 100,000 messages about bits of paper? I've heard the messages, but why does having 6 billion bits of paper in the bank make you superior to being a happy person? Well, emotions, women, feminine. You didn't get the message that we're all chauvinists here? It's like, I got the message. I just don't understand, since we all want to feel good, why feeling good is somehow less important than a bit of paper or 6 billion bits of paper, which, imagine trying to carry 6 billion bits of paper around with you. It doesn't get in the way. It doesn't, no. You'll be bowed down to. Everyone will do anything for those bits of paper. It's like, strange place. But it's this strange place. And as Maslow, in his hierarchy of human needs, elucidates, the third need for every single human being in the hierarchy is love and belonging. Survival, security, love and belonging. And in belonging, you need shared reference points. And what we do in our culture is, you belong if you agree that bits of paper matter. You belong if you agree that being effeminate is something to apologize for. You belong to this culture if you run around like a headless chicken trying to improve your productivity without evaluating what the goal is. It's like, is this productivity taking us towards a sustainable, healthy, happy marriage and planet? And that's not important. Just be productive. It's like, so don't think, just be productive. Be more efficient at doing something. And then you'll fit right into America. And so, I mean, thinking, if you want to belong, you have to be like us. And the challenge of suicide, the challenge of the secrecy and the abuse, is that an abuser who's putting forward a face that is acceptable and that does belong in our culture, the banker, the father in an official suit that is very productive doing some bizarre thing in our culture, and thus belongs, who drives home in a BMW that's very important because it's precise, and we like precision, and German cars are precise, and so he's spent all this money that he could have spent investing in the well-being of the planet on this precise instrument. And so anyway, he comes home, and all the facade of social acceptability. And then secretly sexually molests his child. And then, in order to stay acceptable in a culture that hates to look at its own shadow, he disowns that he would ever do anything like that. No, that's disgusting. I hate people like that. They should be locked up. And it's a very interesting dynamic. There was a study in Congress that found that it was congressmen acting out homosexually in private, and in cases abusing power, who were most likely in their official capacity to attack homosexuality, and many of them Republicans. And so there's this rift within the self, within the abuser. The abuser doesn't own, is not proud of, doesn't accept some part of themselves. They hate it because it's not acceptable. It's not going to get them the belonging, the survival, the security they need in a culture that is as chauvinistic as ours. But this is how the virus gets passed on, is first there's this sense of disowning a part of oneself in order to survive. Because to belong is to survive. We say survival, security, and that survival, love and belonging. But without love and belonging in a pack mammalian species, we came from a pack mammalian species. Our ancestors are monkeys. Pack mammalian species survive better as a pack. And they survive better as a pack because you've got lookouts. One part of the tribe can sleep. One part can look out. If anyone, they're all looking in 360 degrees. The eyes just look one way. And they'll all alert each other of a predator. They'll all alert each other of food. It's just a scientific reality that when you belong to a pack, your odds of survival, assuming the pack is even moderately intelligent go way up. The odds of survival in a moderately intelligent pack of monkeys go up. And the odds of survival in a moderately intelligent pack of human beings go up. And so if you need to be a certain way to fit into a pack, now monkeys didn't do this quite as much, but we have come up with a good 10,000 different rules of what is and is not acceptable in different packs of human beings. In the Republican pack, it's you do not get love and belonging if you believe in helping poor people. Like that is not. And that could be a little bit cynical in some groups. Oh, no, it's not about that. It's about governments helping poor people. We don't want that. Sure, we should help poor people, but government, sure. Whatever the distinctions are, there are more than 10,000 rules in different human packs about what is and isn't acceptable. Used to be fine to beat your wife, but not anymore. Still very important to cut off clitorises with rusty knives in certain parts of Africa, but not over here. We rewrite history depending on who has the dominant, political power, etc. And it's not very popular to actually talk about the truth. But what happens in these different machinations of what is lovable and belongs and what actually happens, because when you create 10,000 different rules of lovability and acceptability, it doesn't mean that everyone in those cultures obey all those rules, but what it does mean is it creates a lot of secrecy. It creates a lot of secrecy and taboos, where people in power, a parent, a teacher, a government official, a police officer, can do something in secret to another human being that is defined by the culture as unvaluable, as dehumanizing. In our culture, for example, shit, feces, poo, is considered disgusting. Now, why our own bodies are called disgusting is another matter. Why fertilizer for the food and the planet that we eat is considered undesirable is a good question. Why the cycle of life that we depend on, meaning if there was no feces, there would be no eating. If there was no eating, we'd all be dead. Why this is partitioned off into some weird distinction that we want nothing to do with is a good question. But the real question is, having decided, for whatever bizarre reason, that feces is insulting, taboo, not to be talked about, we have associated a devaluing with feces. So now, having succeeded at doing this, now if a policeman, an older brother, a father, a teacher, a gang of boys pins you down and takes a dump on you, what they've done is they've just linked in your mind. See, the culture did the work for them to link feces with something that was so unworthy, it was so terrible that it couldn't be talked about, that it was disgusting. Ooh. It's like, where do people learn that? They learned it from watching thousands of people over dozens of years doing the same thing. And so it's been linked by the culture as meaning ugly, undesirable, etc. And the whole purpose of humiliation, of torment, etc., is to transfer the fact that our culture creates an enormous level of shame, meaning our culture takes parts of who we are as human beings and says, this part is worthless, this part is valueless, this part is disgusting, this part is unlovable, this part does not belong. The problem with that is it doesn't go anywhere. For example, when we take our 101 or 2 tons of metric garbage and haul it off to a hole, it doesn't go anywhere just because we have called that energy in that form, meaning we usually create it. We take a certain form of energy in a certain form, we transform it into something else, energy in a new form, and we engage with it in a way that we want, plastic bags, paper bags, books, clothes, whatever. And then when we're done with it, we say, we don't want this anymore. And what usually happens in a belonging pack-based species is as soon as we say we don't want it anymore, nobody else does either. Nah, me neither. I don't want it. You don't want it? I don't want it. No, nobody wants that. Okay. So let's call it garbage. And we don't want garbage, so we'll stick in a big truck, pull it away, dig a big hole, and push it in a hole, or we'll burn it and put all the chemicals in that product into the atmosphere, all the lead, just burn it at high temperature. And we don't want chemicals to breathe, but unfortunately we've turned it into a new form of energy and formation that we have to breathe because it's now in the air. But just because we do this, it doesn't change the nature of molecules. It doesn't change the nature of our reality. We've just changed it in our mind from something that could have been useful, could have been interesting, could have been a part of who we are, and we've turned it into this word called garbage. And then because we don't like garbage by our own definition, we then dig a big hole. Well, when someone takes a dump on you, what they're saying is, you be the one. We're sick. We're sick of being marginalized. We're sick of the fact that this culture has made us feel like we don't belong, that we're worthless, that we're valueless, that I can't be myself. I'm sick of that fact. I'm angry. But I need this culture to survive. I need this culture to survive. If I don't have love and belonging, I don't survive. If my boss decides I don't belong in this company, I don't have any of those bits of paper everyone's scrambling to get. If I don't have any of those bits of paper in a culture that defines itself as a capitalist culture, as a paper culture, if I don't have bits of paper in a culture that deifies bits of paper, I don't belong in the culture. And if I don't do this and not do this, the boss says I don't belong. So I can't do that. I want to do this. I want to express all of, but I can't. It's infuriating. Now, what we do when we shame someone, particularly in, public humiliation and all that, or, they used to behead people or stone them in public. What we're doing is we're taking all of that energy that doesn't belong, that's inside of us, and we're trying to transfer it to someone else and say, you are the one who doesn't belong. You see, you've learned your whole life shit is terrible, it's worthless, it's ugly, it's disgusting. So now we're going to shit on you, and you're going to feel ugly and disgusting. And then we'll forget about how we feel for a few hours. And then you're going to feel that way. And we'll all be, oh, what did he think? Imagine what people did to them when they walked around with shit on their face. Oh, gosh, that's a good one. It's releasing the toxicity that the culture has created. The culture created toxicity out of thin air by defining feces as horrible as opposed to a blessing. And having succeeded at that, and then put the message in at a high intensity, 10,000 times over the course of a lifetime, then you get all the weight of that going at one person. Or rape. Disgusting. You're not, certain countries, if you've been raped, they'll kill you. You're that bad. Why? You've been raped. Well, we're going to kill you. It's a stain on our family. Where'd you come up with that one? Well, we're all about power, even more than bits of paper. We're all about power. And we were supposed to protect your beauty, your sanctity, etc. And you being raped means that we didn't do our job. We didn't protect you. We couldn't protect our women. Okay, so you couldn't protect your women. Well, we feel helpless. Okay, so you feel helpless. Well, it's not okay to feel helpless. We're no longer men if we feel helpless. Because men don't feel helpless. Well, that's a dumb idea, but anyway. Men don't feel helpless. You've made us feel helpless. So we're going to kill you. And then we won't be helpless anymore. How about that? I mean, how'd you come up with that math? Well, we did. Perfectly acceptable. Well, so-and-so got raped. She was killed last year. It's just the way things work in this bizarre culture, It's always easy to see the stupidity of another person's culture. It's very difficult to see the stupidity of our own. But every one of these are bizarre creations within the human psyche, within a framework that often gets back to the original thing, this deep correlation with pain and unlovability, that if I'm feeling pain, I must be unlovable by God, by that projection of all that is fatherly and motherly out there in a world where fathers and mothers often abuse and hate some face of their children because of the impact that child has on their cultural survivability. In a culture where money is king, you have a family that's poor, and it will hate itself through the eyes of the culture, which looks down on it, because no human wants to be looked down on. In order to belong, you've got to go along with the money game, and going along with the money game creates a ranking scenario, and I'm measuring low. Now you come along and I measure lower. Well, couldn't you change the ranking a little bit? How about having a kindness culture where whoever brings the most kindness to the most people ranks high, and whoever hurts the most people ranks low? Could have no. Let's have a paper culture ranking. Whoever has the most paper being the penultimate experience of, paper? Could we at least have an intelligent ranking system that says that we're doing well when our people are doing well, mentally, emotionally, physically? No. The trouble comes with the abuse survivor, because having created and transferred the fabricated shame, the culture invented a hypothesis that human feces or whatever was so disgusting that anyone who has it on their body, of course, then has to be disgusting too, apparently. And anyone who's bullied is a weakling. Because you could say that if the culture is a weakling, you could say that if a developed country with the biggest military in the world cannot protect its own 6-year-olds from being bullied in a playground, you could say that the culture is weak, that the military has its head in the sand, that the military is failing. It can't protect its own 6-year-olds from 12-year-olds. You could say, what a dumb culture. You fly around with your idiotic planes, your drones, dropping bombs on weddings, you fucking cowards. You idiots. You can't protect a crying 6-year-old a few miles away from your base. What good are you? We could say that. That would be one version of culture. But we don't. What we say is that the 6-year-old is weak and unlovable and undesirable because they couldn't defend themselves from a 12-year-old, and because the school, apparently, with all the teachers and and all the Christians all around protect the meek, the entire culture couldn't protect a 6-year-old. Well, that doesn't sound very intelligent. So let's blame the 6-year-old. Well, that doesn't sound very intelligent, but we'll all agree. Yep. You gotta hit him back. You didn't fight him. Oh, you're no son of mine. You didn't punch him back. Yeah, but there were 5 others. Well, when I was surrounded by 300 giants and I was 6 years old, I punched every one of them. No, you didn't. There's nothing wrong with a bullied 6-year-old. There's something wrong, if we want to go into cultural design, with a country with this much resources that can't protect its 6-year-old. And it doesn't feel wrong because we do it on the inside. There are terrified, humiliated, lonely 6-year-olds inside most Americans who watched divorces, pains, rapes, humiliations, beatings, and couldn't do anything about it. And rather than address those bizarre phenomena in our culture, we turn the other way. We grow up as quickly as we can, and we don't remember what it was like to be 6 years old. We turn that 6-year-old into garbage. We don't protect him on the inside, and we don't protect him on the outside. Is that intelligent? You see, it doesn't matter. In our culture, it helps create a feeling of belonging, to all be the same. It's very dangerous when being the same is to be insane, is to be cruel, is to use vast sums of energy to make things worse, is to destroy our sustainability. when we need to fit into that pattern, it's very dangerous. Now, one of the most fragile arenas in this is the link between what our parents do to us, often quoting whether it's the Bible or quoting love. I have to beat you for your own good. You do understand. I don't want to beat you. I don't want to hurt you. But it's got to be done. You do understand that, right? This is for you. You said those sounds that we don't say in this family. You spoke about Uncle, putting his hands down your pants. And Uncle pays the bills around here, and we don't talk about that. So we got to beat you. You see, to that child, first of all, the culture has told him or her 10,000 times that what just happened to them was bad. And then their entire family has not stopped it from happening. And then someone with authority in some form, be it the authority of force, a 12-year-old to a 6-year-old, a 50-year-old to a 6-year-old, did that thing to them. And in a culture of collusion, the fact that this happened makes everyone uncomfortable. And that discomfort is expressed by turning away from the 6-year-old and pretending it didn't happen. Now, what the 6-year-old gets, what is true in our culture, is that what just occurred with the collusion of the entire culture. I mean, our military is not patrolling the streets protecting 6-year-old from molestation. It wouldn't dream of doing something that intelligent. It could. Our military, rather than, stomping the globe, doing this, could be walking up and down our streets, letting every child in the country know, if anyone does this to you, we've got your back. And we want to know about it. And you're not going to be humiliated. One idea of what to do with all the men we train to protect our country, all the women we train to protect our country, is one idea. That's not what's happening. And so what that 6-year-old learns is that there is not a single human being, not the abuser, not their parents, not their sister, not their brothers, not their teachers, who will protect them, who can protect them, or who will take the shame and the secrecy off the issue. By saying this happened, it had nothing to do with this child. It's not their fault. This is our responsibility. It occurred because we weren't paying attention. We don't know our people. We don't want to know that Uncle's a pedophile. But we also don't want to know that Uncle's uncle was a pedophile. We also don't want to know, and we don't want anyone else to know, that grandfather not only abused Uncle, but abused our father. We don't want that to come out either. Because in this culture, the abuse survivor is correlated and thus associated with taboo, which gets you thrown out of the pack by everyone who's in the in crowd. So if you want to be in the in crowd, you've got to pretend that this part of you doesn't exist. And if you do a good pretense, and it is a pretense, because in a culture that is as pervasive with shame and abuse and chauvinism as ours, there is not a single human being who is not touched by it. One has to be sociopathic not to feel something about this. And you're caught there in the culture because if you're sociopathic, that's a shameful word too. Now, there are lots of people in sociopathic states in America where the pain was so much they dissociated from all emotion and don't feel a goddamn thing. Now, we don't go to these people and say, we're sorry. We're sorry that the pain was so bad that the only way you could survive in this culture, and when I say the only way, all well-being a human being experiences is through the lens of emotions. Certain sensations happen in their body and they feel happy. Certain sensations happen socially around them and they feel happy. Certain sensations, occur mentally and they're delighted. Yes, I feel happy. I like that. It's beautiful. This is the stuff of life. Feeling good about a great design, about an accomplishment. Feelings are the core underpinning of every single human action in history. Feelings produce the chemicals that make every single movement in our body occur. They can be unconscious feelings, like your hand touched a fire 10 times every time it hurt, so your hand starts to feel that sensation and links back. You don't consciously say, I'm scared, but your body remembers the chemical association when you first felt fear and has stored it. And so it's an emotional response. So for someone to dissociate, to make all their emotions unconscious, means that their emotions are so unpleasant so much of the time that in order to survive, in order not to be crippled by pain, they've disconnected. So every single human being in a sociopathic state, of which there are many, we could go to them and apologize and say, what pain do we have to take off you before you would consider it emotionally viable to occupy your own heart? No one's ever asked a sociopath that in this country. Why not? They weren't born sociopathic. They were born feeling. And so much shit went down that at some point, their matrix of survival said, we're not going to make it with these feelings in a culture that attacks people for having feelings. And it's usually a man, simply because men are attacked for being effeminate, i.e. emotional, more than women are. You're not going to survive if you're in this much pain in a culture that attacks you for having pain. What's the solution? Well, it's quite simple. We turn off all consciousness to our emotions, and then there's this liberating exhilaration. I can do anything, I can lie, there's no feeling. I no longer associate with other people. I can just focus on survival. This is where the body developed the sociopathic switch to help people survive in sociopathic cultures. Slow that down a bit. To help people survive in, wait for it, sociopathic cultures. Because empathic cultures do not require human beings to become sociopathic to survive. You see, empathic cultures when a 6-year-old, a 10-year-old, an 18-year-old, a 40-year-old man weep because of the stress and the helplessness of carrying, the absurdities of, I don't get to be a human being. I have to fuck around getting bits of paper with everyone else busily trying to make sure I don't get those bits of paper. You see? When that response, which is a human emotional response to a rat race that is not about human beings and their health and well-being, it is about bits of paper, gets attacked, is, we don't think you belong in this particular culture that we call a workplace. We would prefer if you would take your effeminate emotions over there. Maybe you would fit in on a construction. Yes, we know you've got a wheelchair. Maybe it would. Anyway, it's not quite what we're looking for around here. Human emotions are not welcome in our polite society. Well, that would explain a lot, because this is how sociopathic loops become intergenerational. When the feelings of outrage, shame, helplessness, and grief induced by those feelings are not welcome in the places that induce them, how are they going to change? They don't. Emotions are what have changed every single thing by motivating every interaction. And so if you don't want change, you have got to attack people's emotions. You've got to mask the symptoms. It's like taking the batteries out of the smoke detectors. If someone is enraged, it is a smoke detector going off that something's not quite working. But if you don't have the imagination or the political will or the guts to make the change that needs to be made so that a human being would not be enraged by an enraging situation, it's a very simple fix. You just, tut, tut, tut. We don't like those feelings around here. Could we all agree? Could we all agree? I mean, do you want to change? Do you want to change? Do you want to get off your sorry asses and actually, no, we don't want to do this. Let's just tell that person his feelings aren't welcome. Now we can go back to doing things the way that they've always been done in this country. And that's a great rationale, isn't it? We hurt people before, so we're going to hurt new people. The correlation between suicide, depression, etc., and secrets is that, particularly in abuses of power, when we give the message that you are now undesirable because there's no honorable place for an abuse survivor in this country. For example, as a 6-year-old boy, there's not a single place in the United States that I've encountered where saying, I have been raped repeatedly by my father, builds his social status. There's not a single place where this builds his honor, his lovability, his desirability. Like, oh, we want to play with him, we want to do this. No. Parents say, better avoid that boy. Teachers definitely don't want to. The church, they're often involved. They don't want to get too close. So where's the place where a 6-year-old boy, because you see, for that 6-year-old boy to be abused by his father since 2 years old means a number of things about the culture. First of all, it means that we raise sex offenders in our culture, which is a truth, but it's not a very happy truth. We raise sex offenders. And the odds are that we raised a sex offender before that father. I mean, it wasn't just like he just popped out of nowhere as a sex offender. The odds are that this has been going on for some time, often a few hundred years, without the culture doing a goddamn thing about it any step of the way. Well, that's not a very happy picture. The other odds and obvious facts are that we can't tell. Meaning we raise citizenry. We say, I'm shocked. He's a dentist. He's a lawyer. She's a pediatrician. Why would she abuse her children? In other words, we're so culturally illiterate. We're so emotionally and relationally illiterate that we've actually believed the lie of our culture that if you're a dentist, a lawyer, that means anything about you as a sexual human being. It doesn't, of course. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Many people who have been so shame-based, like a 6-year-old boy who realizes that he would be thrown out and unloved and unknown by every group in the country, save some AA groups, for telling the truth, and who therefore hides the truth. They feel unlovable and unwanted because if the truth were known, they wouldn't be welcome. So what they feel is that deep down inside they're unlovable. Their truth isn't known, and therefore all the love that's given to them is fake. They're not really loved, because in this culture, if the truth were known, they wouldn't be loved. And the only reason they're loved is because they're living a lie. This is a reality that a lot of abuse survivors feel. We are all abuse survivors in this culture, because this culture is what has enabled this. The very fact that an adult in this culture can say, what? They're abusing their child? That's a lawyer. That was a famous person. They're abusing their child? Right there, an objective observer would say this culture doesn't know what it's doing. This culture could raise a man to 40 years old, and that man could possibly think that what one does with one's hands, being a lawyer, this, that, and the other, would have something to do with one's shame pattern? This culture is so dumb that what they didn't learn in school without a single hour of emotional literacy would translate into that? This is a crazy culture. If he's 40 years old, there must be others of them. If there's others of them and nobody did anything about it, if there was someone emotionally illiterate at age 40 and not a single person said that was a problem because they all said it wasn't my problem, that's a very immature culture. But immature cultures don't like looking at themselves because they have a lot of growing to do. And they don't like looking at that because they don't know how to grow, because they're immature. And so they attack the messenger. This is a problem for our abuse survivors, because the messenger that our culture needs to grow is our abuse survivors. And they do get attacked as one of many symptoms of our immaturity as a culture. And when they get attacked so many times, by so many people, from so many angles, with the shared message, you're not worth fighting for. Your truth isn't worth fighting for. Your truth is a threat. And you have two options. You can stay secret, or you can be outcast. You have two options. You can stay secret, or you can be outcast. When that's your opportunity as an abuse survivor, When someone, through the cultural programming, has first of all made an event incredibly painful, number one. Number two, has then correlated that event on you by a gang of people all, in this case, gang up to take a dump on you. And then when you're left carrying the shame of that, and when the culture doesn't want to look at itself, you're stuck with safe topics like what weird group of men managed to throw more balls into a hoop against another group of men. Did you see the game last night? Well, why isn't the conversation in such an immature culture that needs so much change? What abuses did you see that we could be addressing in the last 24 hours in the company, in the family, etc.? And what does that look like? And what would be ideas for a 10x culture? Could that be an intelligent response to being as immature as we are as a culture? It could be. But what would have to happen? We'd actually have to start embracing. We'd have to say, no, shit isn't bad, it's manure. Pain isn't bad, it's a source of learning. Information isn't bad just because it doesn't fit into our little box. It's a chance to expand the box. So let's start growing together. We could have a culture like that. It's just the same crisis comes up around love and belonging. The people in mainstream American culture wouldn't fit into that culture very well in their secret places. So let's attack the culture as opposed to move towards that possibility. The reason abuse survivors who are asked by everyone in this culture to keep secret do kill themselves and want to kill themselves is that they have received a message more than 10,000 times from their abuser and everyone else involved that we would rather you die than this secret come out. That if this secret comes out, it will destroy this family. It will destroy this country. It will destroy this culture. It will destroy this faith. It will destroy this religion. It will destroy this Catholic Church. If this secret comes out, it will do harm to the dogmas and power structures we have created and that we depend on for a sense of certainty and survival. You are therefore a threat to our sense of safety in the familiar and the known. And we want you to go away. The trouble is, since we're also at the same time attempting to maintain the facade of being a civilized and intelligent culture, the trouble is, while Hitler did solve the solution by understanding accurately that the people who carry shame, Hitler burned 70,000 German people with mental emotional illnesses, retardation, defects, Hitler burned 70,000 German non-Jews who were the garbage of their culture. Just like we send our garbage things to the local incinerator, or send them off into a big pit. See, Hitler's brain was a little bit more integrous in this area. We turn away and we don't like looking at it. Hitler said, we burn garbage. We all agree we don't like looking at our defects. So let's burn these children. Let's burn these people with mental emotional, and burnt 70,000. And then he said, the Jews, they're defective just because they're Jews. So we've got to do the same to them as we do to our own people. We, you and I, bury the secrets. We burn the secrets. We torment ourselves with the secrets that nobody wants to hear in our polite social groups. And at some point, it seems more efficient to just burn the whole, everyone who has secrets, you know. They're all, just bury them, kill them all. So we don't kill people in our culture by sending them off to the incinerator. We kill them psychically. I was going through an intense sexual trauma a few years back, and a client in construction site asked me how I was doing. I said, I've never been worse. It's absolute hell. He said, good, keep it up. I don't even think he was listening. That's how we bury secrets. You see, because he wasn't expecting the truth from a man in America on a construction site. Because every man in America on construction site has learned to lie about their feelings to survive, because that's the kind of culture we create as a country. So what do you do when someone's not playing by the rules? And I started breaking the rules around shame and secrecy because I wanted to die. And I understood why I wanted to die. Because I don't like living in a culture of lies where not a single human being wants to see who I am, to know how and why I feel what I feel, to know what created these feelings, and to respond with love and compassion and belonging. I live in a culture where to tell the truth creates fear, panic, anxiety, stress, rushed. Oh my gosh, I wasn't expecting an answer to how you're doing and how you're feeling. I just had 1 second and I didn't want to look like a complete asshole as I wasn't paying attention. I need to be on my way. Yeah, but you asked how I'm doing. And we all know that nobody actually wants to know. But that's one of the lies that maybe it's a good idea to start breaking open. The parts in me that want to die are trying to accommodate you in this country, who don't want to see him, who don't want to hear him, who don't want to love him, who don't want to know him, who don't want to take the 10 hours to unravel the full tapestry, who don't want to untwist the forms of twisted love, where the abuser, to make themselves feel a little better after they've dumped the shame, don't tell mom, it will break her heart. We're doing this out of love, you understand, for your mother. We're doing this out of love for so-and-so. We're trying to protect the church. We don't want to make the official look embarrassed. In other words, you don't matter. The official does. You don't matter. Your mother does. You don't matter. I matter. You don't matter. The teacher matters. You don't matter. Their busy schedule matters. You don't matter. The money matters. You don't matter. Could you just go away? Is a message that my abused self has heard my entire life. More than 1 million sustained messages from thousands of different sources. You don't matter. You don't matter. We don't want you. We don't want what you have to say. We want the facade that makes us feel comfortable. Now, what this does in a very real way to every abuse survivor in this country is it says, first of all, we're going to take you into unimaginable pain. Then we're going to tell you your feelings don't matter. Then we're going to distract you by sending you to school and teaching you everything but how to deal with abuse and feelings. That would be much too intelligent. Then we're going to humiliate and tease you for being emotional because you've been abused. Then we're going to say you're now a professional, and professionals have one important trait. Very, very important you learn this as a professional. You don't have feelings. Oh, you have little polite banter. You make sure that everyone knows that you're safe, that you will not talk about feelings or emotional topics. And even clients apologize to me in this country for having feelings. If I arrive for an appointment in my, professional capacity, making my hundreds of dollars an hour, and clients are emotional, they apologize to me. A client who's having a fight with their husband, when I knock on the door in a moneyed capacity, do not say, well, you're a human being. You understand that marriages affect our well-being much more than professional activities. So why don't we just have an agreement, a human agreement, that you'll let me finish this fight over the next 20 minutes and not charge me hundreds of dollars. And we'll all live in a culture where emotions actually matter and marriages come before money. But that would be too intelligent, wouldn't it? So no, that's not what these clients do that make millions of dollars an hour or millions of dollars a year. No. They apologize to me, the professional, for being emotional in a fucked up emotional country that hasn't taught them how to deal with emotions any more than it taught me. They apologize for disarrays in their marriage in a country that considers that you can go through college without learning a goddamn thing about marriage. It's apparently not important that 50% of our people have failed miserable marriages. Why would we care about people's feelings in a chauvinistic culture? Bits of paper are what matter, so you're going to learn about that, but you're not even going to learn that. You're going to learn what companies have agreed to evaluate you on to be hireable so you can make bits of paper. So if you got an A+ in algebra, oh, we want you on our sales force. That doesn't quite add up. How much algebra do you do on sales? Well, it doesn't matter. You're an A-class student. If you could copy those bastards, I'm sure you'll fit into our sociopathic cult. Clients apologize for having feelings, and they put their marriage on the shelf so they can conduct a business as the primary deity of our culture. And they're angry if I talk about mine, or at least a little puzzled. You're a little bit odd, was my last client's comment. You're a strange man. I think it's good, but strange. I'm going to have to think about this. We're not used to telling the truth. Well, the trouble is when our most painful parts have to lie 24/7 to feel like they belong, when that's what every desperate, wounded part needs more than anything is a feeling of love and belonging. And they're in a cult that says that you don't belong if you exist. Meaning, incest, you exist, you don't belong. So you're in a cult that says you don't belong if you exist. And what those parts of us need more than anything is a sense of love and belonging. They don't actually need money. They need a hug from someone that's able and willing to look them in an eye and see them and understand the indignity and the horror and the shame and the pain of this cult. This cult we call culture. And share some of the sadness and grief of those lies. We need a hug. Holding. Intelligence. You see, intelligence is actually correlating actions to data rather than to lies. That's one definition. That's what we need. And we're not getting it. And nobody's apologizing to the millions of abuse survivors walking around for the absurdity of our culture. No one's apologizing for the torture cells of daily life. Everyone's so grateful for the facade, for the mask. It's easy to make money in America. You just put on a facade, pretend you're someone you're not, and you make tons of money. It's simple. It's very difficult for the abuse survivor in us to be honored fully even once. Once in 100 years. Once by one person in 100 years. It's very difficult to create that feeling when we're surrounded by people who don't want to know. And so the desire to die is in many ways an accommodation of other people's discomfort. And the message and conversation is one of this. We all know that you in there have no value. You've never received an ounce of value from anyone in this culture your entire life. Why would you have any value if not a single person can see it? First part of the hypothesis, first part of the data gathering. Yeah, that's true. No one has ever seen this part. Nobody wants to see it. People are going to be angry and uncomfortable every single time you tell them the truth. Yeah, that's true. It's fucking miserable carrying these secrets, living these lies so that other people who don't have the guts to have contact with their own feelings can stay numb. Yeah, that's true. There's not a single person who's going to thank you for showing up in your truth. Yeah, maybe one or two, but probably. Yeah, that's about right in America. What the fuck am I doing here? I don't know. Money isn't going to take this away, is it? No, you got tons of money. It doesn't seem to be helping. Sex isn't going to take this away either, is it? No. It's going to feel great in the orgasm. And then there's that ache of knowing that they don't want to know either. That they're not going to tell you either. That you're both just medicating pain when it suits you in a culture that doesn't know how to love. Yeah, that's about the size of it. And drugs, yeah, they're not. There may be a slippery slope if it's an opioid or something like that. Yeah, they're going to feel good for, and it's going to feel even worse a few years down the road. Do you want to go down that road? No. So what the fuck are you doing here? And this is the question every abuse survivor that wants to die has to work through. What the fuck are you doing here in a culture that hates you, that will always hate you, that doesn't have the courage to see itself as the enemy, and so will turn you into the enemy for making us feel uncomfortable? What are you going to do when you're surrounded by idiots who every time you break down in emotion and start telling the truth, think they're doing you a favor, understanding as they do of just how sociopathic we are, by giving you tips on how to hide what's going on? So that, I know, I have the same issue. Duh. It doesn't go down very well around here. Yes. It'll be our little secret. Little glance here and there. Two abuse survivors knowing each other secretly. The boss does it to his wife as well. Oh. Are we 5-year-olds in this culture? Or can we actually respond with love and caring to the enormity of the grief that we hold as human beings, for the suffering we do to our children, to our souls, our hearts, to our planet, to our fellow human beings? And we respond to the lie that money is going to sort this out. Human love, human courage, human kindness will respond to this issue if we as a culture cultivate and honor human love, perceptiveness, intimacy, into me you see, and kindness. And when we torment people beginning by 2 years old, and then withhold emotional literacy, withhold it passionately. Stop talking to your classmate. You might actually get to know someone. A is for apple. 6 divided by 2 is 3. Key facts in life, no doubt. But how about what's that black eye? And why is it that we as a culture can't talk about the torment we give to our children? See, you'd have a wrapped classroom right there. No more bullshit and skiving off school. See, because children aren't dumb, we are. We think that the addicted, traumatized, sexually abused, confused, worthless, shame-based feeling children that we create in this culture are going to go through being born into this world with this level of dishonesty and focus on A is for apple? That's a bit of a stretch. But who knows someone who was hurt? Who feels lonely? Who feels scared of telling the truth? And here's how a healthy culture works. Who needs a hug? If you get children soon enough before they've been dissociated from their feelings and learned that having feelings and being connected in their own heart is going to kill them, they are right there. Because that's what they're living through. They're not living through some sociopathic culture that's trying to convince them that bits of paper are more important than their mother being beaten at home. That's for idiots like us. Children are smart if we have the intelligence to follow their feelings, to understand that if they're terrified, there's something terrifying them. And it's probably us, because we're of this cult that we've packaged as a civilized culture that raises sociopathic and emotionally illiterate, chauvinistic, materialistic human beings who are passionately and rapidly destroying our own body and our own planet faster than any culture in human history, than any cult in human history, and calling it progress and modernity and civilization. The people who want to die and leave can't escape the lies quite as efficiently as the rest of us. And we can learn an enormous amount from them. If rather than playing the pity game and the rescue game of idiocy and pretending that the culture really is great, and all we have to do is get you out of your delusions that anything's wrong, that stuff might be so painful around here that you'd be better off dead, if we could just get you out of that illusion, that strange, you want to get away from materialism, from people thinking money are more important than human lives, from doctors shouting at you, from you want to get away from spousal abuse and the inevitability of painful relationship. And what are you thinking? Come back. Don't abandon us in this torture hell. Let's make it illegal for people to escape this fucked up country. They can't kill themselves. Oh, they broke the law. They're lawbreakers. How dare they escape here we are suffering and da-da-da. How dare they break free? If we could flip that little game and say we, as a cult that likes to consider ourselves cultured, are going to bring our suicide. People who get it, who feel the pain we've numbed. We're going to learn from them and we're going to transform our lives. You don't like divorces? How about changing the education system so we study successful marriage? Done. You don't like feeling that your auntie, who's a beautiful and kind woman, is going to die because of a medical bit of fine print? We're going to put people ahead of money. We're all going to work hard to help people. And you don't like the fact that regardless of what an asshole you are, you're going to be ranked on the Fortune 400 list? Done. We're going to have a kindness 400 list. And the kindest people, including your auntie, are going to be made as heroes because we actually believe in human beings. You see, this starts to be an interesting life already. 3 things. People ahead of money, kindness ahead of money, anything ahead of money, just beauty, joy. Oh, it's exciting. It's beautiful. Maybe I'll hang around for a few more years. You see, if we could engage this and understand there's nothing wrong with them. There's something wrong with a culture that lets them get to this point with the clear message that their issues are not welcome at the table. They're welcome here. You want to tell me about your pain, your lies? They're welcome here. Because then we've got truth. And truth is who you are. The body is a shell. When you are a thought, a feeling that nobody wants to know about, that nobody wants to embrace, you are dead. It's just your mask that lives on. And so one of the things that I've learned about people who want to die is they have a lot of integrity. They feel like they want to die, so they actually want to do it. They actually want to be in integrity with their feelings. There's something very beautiful in someone who's honest that who they are is not welcome. Wants to rejoin the ancestors from perhaps other cultures that are not quite as crazy as our relatives in this one.